Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live, or however you may look at your clock, this middle of the night or early morning bonus upload. If it is early morning for you, happy 4th of July. Before we get into this early morning or middle of the night bonus, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this middle of the night or early morning bonus, shall we?
Today's first encounter is a subscriber submission. Hello, Jeff. I am GH. I currently live in the Netherlands for 8 years. But I'm originally born and raised in Romania, an old country full with legends and myths, and I am a believer in the paranormal and cryptids, like ghosts, werewolves, vampire, etc. A few years ago, I subscribed to your channel, and I've heard so many real encounters of Dogman, and I truly believe they exist. So the following encounter is from my mom. She lives in Romania now in an apartment. My dad passed away almost 6 years ago. She lives in a small town surrounded by woods and hills. And she heard several times in the middle of the night, around 2 or 3 deep, loud howls around her flat. And she looked out her window, and she saw one big black shadow darker than the night itself, who was standing in the left side of the flat where it's kids park. And sometimes she saw it in the alley in front of her flat. What she could see was a long tail, pointy ears, and was making clapping sounds when the creature walked. Further away is a parking lot, and she saw the creature there, chasing the stray cats and dogs. This creature most of the time was howling hard and doing some sounds like a donkey. She had a few years ago one gentle stray dog, and my mom was feeding him on a daily basis, and the dog was staying around her flat. But one day he just disappeared. Many cats were found, ripped apart. She was asking her neighbors if they saw or heard the same creature, and they say yes, they did, and frequently. Where she lives is more apartments, and there's a grocery store nearby. And my mom heard several times people talking about this thing. They call it a werewolf or just a creature, different options. The locals are saying this creature, or those creatures, has a shelter in the woods for many decades, and some people went missing and never found after they went into those woods to harvest wild mushrooms. My mom moved to that town 5 years ago, so she doesn't know personally all what was happening there. But she heard about those stories from a long-time resident. I shared her story because my mom doesn't speak or write very good English. And I'm sorry if I made any mistakes. English isn't my first language. Thank you, Jeff, for having the opportunity to share with you and with your subscribers my mom's story. If you have any questions, I can ask her and I will answer you. Today's second encounter. Okay, this still scares me a little to this day, and I have no idea what I saw. I was about 9 or 10 and staying at my grandmother's house during my summer vacation. It was in Puerto Rico, and the area she lived in was a lush, very dense jungle or woods. I used to explore all the time with my brother and cousins, so we were always doing something. One morning, I arrived at my grandmother's house, and we were told not to go outside because something had happened next door. No word on what had happened, but my cousin and I snuck out anyway to see the neighbor. We were friends with him. His nickname was Black, so that's what we called him, and we found him in his backyard investigating his pig pen. I went to go see the pigs, but they weren't there, and he asked us what we were doing. We told him we were just curious on what happened, so he told us that someone stole 2 of his biggest pigs. But the strangest thing was that he had locked the pen, but somehow the pigs were probably lifted about 7 feet over the wall. Mind you, these were big pigs, probably in the 300-pound range. He knew because he found the wall scraped like if something rubbed against it hard, and that the lock was intact. A little later, we saw Black again. He was angry because he found the pigs deep in the jungle, both dead, so he was out for revenge. I decided to go out and see the pigs, and snuck out again, and didn't even get past 12 feet from the front door when I noticed tracks. These tracks looked kind of like the only way I can explain is the cross between something and a man. I followed them and heard something in front of me and saw someone or something halfway hiding behind a palm tree. It was about my height with dark skin, almost like a shadow and big red eyes. I was so close to it that I heard the breathing, and it sounded exhausted or scared to see me. Its breathing sounded like someone with a nasal congestion breathing through their mouth. I don't know how long I was looking at it, and it was looking at me, but I believe it was probably 5 to 10 minutes. My cousin saw me and saw the tracks, then bumped into me, and that's when I told him to run. So we both went into the house. My cousin had seen the tracks, but he didn't see what I saw. The only person who believed me was my grandmother, who saw me outside and saw what I was looking at, and went out to get a weapon to defend me, but saw that I ran and told me that the creature ran in the opposite direction after I spooked it. Sorry for the whole long story, but that's how the day went. I never saw the creature again, but there were tracks where it was standing and claw marks in the palm tree. Unfortunately, when we ran into the house, we didn't realize that we ran over the tracks, so they were gone. But because of seeing that, it got me interested in the unknown. Also, sadly, found out a year ago that Black died about 10 to 12 years ago. He died never knowing what had happened to his pigs, or if the creature I saw was what had killed his pigs. Alright, I truly believe that was a Dogman. My kids have a friend whose dad is from Puerto Rico, and I've chit-chatted with him back in the day, and asked him about, cryptids. He never really much talked of Bigfoot. He spoke of some sort of werewolf-like creature. So what I think this 9 or 10-year-old child saw was the Dogman was probably crouched down behind a tree, giving it the look that it was his size. Clearly it had to be very large and very strong to get this pig, or 2 pigs, over a 7-foot wall. I think what happened, that it didn't get really spooked by the kid, but because of all the kind of commotion from, this guy losing his pigs, the grandmother seeing her grandson, I think that's what spooked the Dogman to run deep into the jungle. There's a lot of deep, lush forests in Puerto Rico, so it's a mini not even a mini, it's a tropical rainforest. And like I said, my kid's friend, their dad really, he lived in Puerto Rico until he was like in his 20s. And they honestly had a strong belief of some sort of werewolf creature. He lived in a small village right next to the jungle or forest. And he shared some crazy, little stories. Nothing that he saw, but things that he heard. But like his village was very poor. So very superstitious still because they lived so close to the forest. They used the forest for, food, shelter, whatever they needed, they got from the forest. It wasn't more or less like the city life in Puerto Rico. So today's third encounter. This happened back in January of 2014 on a back road in northeast Arkansas. At the time, I was a newspaper delivery driver. I picked up the papers from the press, usually at 12:15, and was a 45-minute drive to the start of my route. At the time, I was a smoker, so after I bagged up enough newspapers to sustain my route for a while, I'd light up a cigarette and roll the window down. Being cold, I tried to keep it up as much as possible because my car back then didn't have heat. There is a really long stretch of gravel road called Old Military Road. On the left side of the road are mostly homes, and on the right side is a fence post and an old open pasture with barns and troughs for horses and cows. It's in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, though. There are no street lights. Some people have floodlights in their yard. So I'm driving along with my windows down, smoking a cigarette. It's about 2:30 at this time, and I begin smelling a combination of burning hair and bad period or UTI. Not like a mixture of the two, but one and also another. It wasn't a great smell. I tossed the cigarette and rolled up my window, but I could still smell the smell. Whatever it was awful. The further I go down the road, the worse the smell gets. Usually I see some cows sleeping outside or horses chilling sometimes, but nothing tonight. So I know that I'm not the only one that picked up on something being weird that night. As I'm coming up to the fork in the road, I have to take the left. There's a big open field to the far right. I see what looks like a man with a deer's head. It was too dark for me to tell whether it was a man wearing a deer skull or an actual human deer cross. But it was definitely the source of whatever that smell was, and it scared the shit out of me. And I didn't want to hang out long enough to figure out exactly what it was. To my perception, it was at shoulder height 7 foot tall. The head probably added another foot. I don't know, but this thing was massive. They were definitely deer antlers, and the smell was disgusting. I saw him stretch his arms. Imagine flexing your arms and chest by making a wide C with your arms. His movement for 2 to 3 seconds, I saw him. It looked to be human. I found a new job late January and started in February. I wasn't interested in ever being out in that area again. Other weird shit happened in that year, in that job, but that was definitely the weirdest. I was looking at a mountain on Peak Bagger, mid-August. I decided to climb a rather large mountain near Springer, Georgia, the southern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. To get to said mountain, you have to take an approach trail and then start bushwhacking into the woods for about an hour. Time was about 7 in the morning, light rain. I'm half asleep after sleeping in a wooden shelter all night, barely getting a wink. The forest floor is soaking wet. I'm trying to conserve energy by following a game trail as it gets steeper and thicker. About halfway up, I see but do not register something whitish-gray looking at me from between 2 trees, out of the corner of my eye about 40 feet away. I look down, watching my step, look up and see an adult Sasquatch blocking my path directly in front of me. To give you an estimate of the size, the buckberry was chest high, and I'm 6'4". Some vegetation 20 feet away, it came up to his mid-thigh. Face reminded me of a lemur. It was quite different from what you may expect. I looked him right in the eye, confused. He bolted to my right very quickly and silently before I finished taking another step to stop. He disappeared into the early morning fog. Today's fifth encounter. I was in an old camping spot with my mom in Mason County, Washington. There's a lake there where people like to party. There's a big cleared out area for parking on the lake. The other side of the lake, it's densely wooded with tall, skinny pines. The bottom half of the trees are bare. After hanging out that night before and meeting people, my mom and I made a bed in the back of her truck. People often stay there overnight to avoid drinking and driving. There was probably 6 people in total staying in the clearing overnight. I woke up at the break of dawn to relieve myself. I was the only one up. After doing my business, I noticed some noises from the other side of the lake. There's nothing on that side besides an old abandoned kids' camp in very thick woods. I immediately recognized the sound as wood knocking. I sat on the bank of the lake and watched and listened for a while. More wood knocks, then whoops. Then, faintly screeching or yelling. One of the huge trees starts shaking violently. I looked down to the bottom of the tree, and there it was. A dark figure freaking out. He seemed pissed, jumping up and down, running back and forth and shaking trees, hooting and hollering. Did he know that I was watching him? I didn't know. But I knew what it was. This, back in the day, when I had a crappy flip phone that only took potato pictures. So I knew it was useless. If I could barely see him, I knew my phone wouldn't. I sat watching it for a while. Then I got scared. He was so pissed off that I was there presumably. Nothing was stopping him from walking around the lake to my location. So I went back to the truck at this time. I laid back down in the cab instead of the bed with my mom, with a blanket over my head, hoping someone else would awake soon. I didn't tell my mom. In fact, I had grown up in that area and played in those woods my whole childhood, and never had any experiences. Not until I moved to the other side of the sound when I was older did I start having encounters. Tonight's final encounter. Cheshire, 2017. I saw a female upright wolf watching me from the woods outside of my bedroom. It was a number of years ago now, and I saw her from my bedroom window. I remember her thick arms and muscled body. At the time, I lived in a home that looked out onto the green belt. There were lots of trees, brush, streams, and farmland that way. For a number of weeks, I had felt watched when I was at home or when I was out camping. I had a feeling that night that there was something watching me, so I got up and looked out the window. That's when I saw her. She was around 7 feet tall. It hadn't gone dark yet, so I could see her pretty clearly. She was just watching me. I could clearly make out breasts. That's how I knew she was a female. A number of weeks before this happened, we did have most of our chickens killed, but I'm not sure this was related. She also looked sickly somehow, as if she wasn't well. She had a human-like face, but there was a definite snout. I would describe her as a female bipedal wolf. I watched until she left, and then I went back to bed. I still feel watched sometimes, even though I live somewhere else now. One night, when I was camping with a friend, there was something outside of our tent. Whatever they are, there was more than one, as we could hear them in different areas at the same time. We were so scared that we rang the police, and they came and walked us out of the woods. We didn't tell them about the things hiding in the brush because we knew they wouldn't believe us anyway.
Well, there you have it, folks. This middle of the night bonus or early morning bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and honestly what gives people a chance and a place to share their experiences and theories judgment-free, simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.